Welcome to the channel. It's your host, Ferina, and you're watching Millennial Mermaid TV. In this episode, it's a deep dive about remote work. So stay tuned as my guest, Nils Smith, who has over 145 followers combined on all his social media channels, is gonna give you the lowdown on what remote work is and what it can mean for you. If you haven't subscribed, please do and click that update button so you can get notified whenever there's a new episode that's waiting for you. Again, like, subscribe, and hit update so you know if there's a new episode that's just come out. First, thank you so much for agreeing to be my first international guest. And I realized, well, Geraldine pushed me to go make it a thing, do it. I said yeah, you are the ideal person to be my first international guest because number one, you're my podcast hero. Number two, I finished all of your YouTube videos, most of your early podcasts, and I was like, how do I do this? But Nils has a lot of friends who can be his guests. All my friends, and you know who they are, did not want to be guests on my podcast. So I had to start by myself. But it was fun, and now we're here. And thank you so much for agreeing, Nils.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a huge privilege.
And most of us, especially the friends who are going to be listening, know you for what you've achieved in the last 5-10 years of your career. But aside from what you've been sharing with us through our little work meetings, I realized I rarely got to ask how you got into remote work or how did you get into tech. So I would love if you could start off with that.
So prior to getting into consulting and social media, agency work, I was a youth minister for many years. And so that started in 1999. I was 19 years old, and AOL Instant Messenger was the technology that people used. And a 7th grade girl in the youth group, my first summer youth job, introduced me to it, my first day in youth ministry. And I was like, man, this is a cool tool to help me do what I do. And so from there, I was a youth pastor for about 10 years. And then MySpace came along and Facebook came along, and I was just an early adopter. And I've always been entrepreneurial. And so always looking for opportunities, and always, learned how to build websites early and learned how to just different things online. And so when live streaming became a thing, I got in early there. I helped start onlinechurch.com, and that was exciting. That was early days of Facebook, and we figured out how to do church on the internet. And essentially what happened is my wife wanted to move to New York City. We were in Texas, and I was working at a church there, and she and I was running onlinechurch.com at the time for that church. And she's like, I think we should move to New York. And I was like, that's crazy. I've got a great job. We built a house here. We were living the American dream in many ways in Texas. And she said we should move to New York. So I started literally looking for jobs, and in New York, thinking you've got to have a job there. And I remember going and talking to my boss, who is the executive pastor, Chris, and he and just saying, hey, Katie wants to move to New York. I'd love to do contract work with the church still, or something to help. I built this ministry at the church. I think I could still help. And he's like, well, why don't you just do it from there and come back once a month and fly back. And so I learned how to do remote work out of keeping my job and being able to do it remotely. Simultaneously, I had already started building Amplify Social Media, our social media marketing agency, doing a lot of project work for Nick Vujicic, for Pete Scazzaro, for a lot of different ministries and a couple of businesses. It was actually, one that you're familiar with, was Splice, that was acquired by GoPro. So that was actually my biggest client at the time. So I was doing a lot of work for Splice back then. So yeah, that was my journey into remote work.
Hearing all those big names and brands I don't know what the year was when you were started working with them, but it feels like now they're like, oh my gosh, you worked with Splice, with Nick. And how do you feel back then? Because I read one of your podcast, heard one of them, and you said like 10 years ago, we were called crazy, doing
Yes.
all of these things, having church online, having church on social media, and now everybody is online.
It's interesting. Steve Jobs was always a hero of mine, or when I'd always go listen to his keynotes, and he had a famous line, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but basically, if people aren't calling you crazy, you're not pushing the limits. And so I kind of embraced that thought of being perceived as crazy. And so, yeah, so it was always fun to kind of be looking ahead and tinkering in the areas that right now people are calling me crazy, and is virtual reality and cryptocurrency. And I think in 5 years, people are going to look back and be like, oh man, help me. I should have gotten on this earlier. And that's what happened with Facebook, and that's what happened with social media, and that's what happened with live streaming, and that's what is happening right now with remote work and video conferencing. And the truth is, I thought some things like 3D printing was going to catch on faster. I thought virtual reality was going to catch on faster. There's been some things that haven't quite caught on, like I anticipated. But luckily, when you kind of play in futuristic things, there's going to be a few things that catch and stick. And I've kind of bet on the right things a couple of times, and it's worked out professionally pretty well.
Was there ever a scenario where you gave up on this certain trend or something? Like, example, you wished you did more graphic design, and then now you could have made millions on it or something. Is there any specific thing that you maybe not regret, or maybe you wished you had more patience to discover or figure out?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing that I wish I had learned faster was cryptocurrency. I was curious about it. I just didn't take the time to learn about it until a couple of years ago. And had I have paid attention, I know I would have invested in it, and I know, I would have done a lot better. But I would say that I've more tinkered. I bought a 3D printer, and I do still think 3D printing is going to be a big deal, and it is continuing to progress just slowly. Yeah, I would say that the thing that I will make a mistake in is I always say I chase shiny objects. Like, a lot of people can just focus on one thing, and I can't do that. I focus on 12 things at a time, which causes me to not be all in with anything. So if I had gone all in with social media, or all in with virtual reality, or all in with cryptocurrency, I think I could, probably elevate to a higher level in each of those areas. But I think I get so intrigued by new things, and so that causes me to not be all in on anything.
Do you have any advice to those people who, let's say, YouTube?
Yeah.
When I was like in college, we started vlogging, but there was like a super high standard. Everybody wanted those polished productions. The actor, the director, the scriptwriter, everything else.
Yep.
What would your advice be for people who want to get back attuned to that kind of, not really maybe chasing shiny objects, but maybe finding their passions again, seeing now that some of these passions are actually booming or coming into fruition, or maybe the passions they have now might be something that's going to help them in the next 3-5 years?
Yeah, one of the things, Ferina, I love about this podcast is you just did it. And I think you found a tool, an anchor, that was pretty easy to use and get started. And every podcast you make, you get better at it. And I remember when I got into podcasting, I didn't know what kind of mic to get. I literally, my first year of podcasting, I used the free headphones that came with my iPhone. And that was my microphone and my headphones for podcasting. Well, then I found the Blue Yeti microphone, and that I still use that microphone 6 years later. And then I found, Audacity, or I found different tools to better edit, or to better, and obviously, and I've got a team now that will do a lot of that stuff, but it came from just doing and tinkering. And if I listen to old podcasts, there's a side of me that's embarrassed, but there's also a side of me that's proud of, I got better, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't have just started. And I can still make excuses because there's better microphones, and I could invest more time in preparation. I could invest more time in post-production. But I think sometimes you've got to do it and continue to get better. And I thought the same thing with vlogging. When I got into vlogging, I was like, I need to figure this out. I've waited. That was another trend that I wish I would have gotten into earlier, is I knew YouTube. I was helping clients with YouTube. But I wasn't, I liked writing. I didn't like being on camera. I literally like being behind a keyboard. And I remember I went and bought a couple cameras, and I was like, I want to make it like Casey Neistat, and I'm in New York City, and it's going to be cool. And I realized I could have a good camera, but if I don't know how to use it well, it's useless. And I've bought more expensive camera equipment. I still use my Logitech webcam for my video camera for my vlogs. And I have a Canon M50, mirrorless good camera, but I just found this to be, for my workflow, the better solution. And so I think people make excuses about gear a lot. I think they make excuses about editing a lot. And I think there's plenty of excuses why not to do something. And the best way to get better at something is to do it. In both the podcast and the vlog, my first episodes have never been published. They're probably out there in the cloud somewhere. I created them and they were just so bad that I can't put publish, but they were part of the process to get to actually launching, because then we got to tweak and get better and figure out, okay, let's not use that microphone, not use that camera angle, whatever it might be, but you got to just do it. And then I think you get better and figure it out along the way.
Perfect. And now we're along the lines of, not waiting for our ducks to get in the row. I'm going to continue with some questions that I got from Instagram. He said, so this is from Thomas. He's actually, I think, from the Netherlands. He asked, how can someone with not much experience get hired? Another question she wanted to be anonymous. What would make you hire a fresh graduate? So basically somebody with no experience, wants to get, into remote work. What were your advice?
A couple of things here, and I don't want to undermine education, but I've got a master's degree. I've gotten lots of education, and I don't use those very much now. Appreciate the learning that I got, but I spent a lot of money and time on that traditional education. And the majority of work you can do today, you can learn in an online course, or you can learn just on YouTube. YouTube is the best, I think, educational platform out there. You just have to filter through the best kind of content. But if you want to become a graphic designer, you can learn that on YouTube. If you want to become a video editor, you can learn that on YouTube. I think one of the things that's going to be so important forward is your personal brand. People think, I don't have a personal brand. I don't have a blog. I don't have a podcast. I don't have a vlog. I don't have a website yet. And you don't necessarily even have to have a website. Before I hire anyone anywhere in the world, I go to their Instagram account. I go to internet stalk them, and I want to see, like, what are they about? Are they fun? Are they boring? Are they into geeky, techie stuff? And like, what is a connection that I can find out a little bit about them? And so I think LinkedIn is probably, it's the social network I've been probably second to Instagram most engaged on in the last 2 years. And it is a powerful tool to connect with anyone professionally anywhere in the world, and just beginning to engage with people in a social context and learning from them and engaging with them. And even just like this of, somebody from the Netherlands connected with you on Instagram and asked me a question. Like, this is a global world that's now connected through social media. Thinking about your passions, I think, is the biggest thing. The beauty of remote work is you can do just about anything. You've got to provide value to people, but it's copywriting, it's graphic design, it's website building, it's website development, it's app building. And the majority of jobs can be done on the internet now. It's still a traditional mindset that you have to go to work. Work is something you do. It's not somewhere you go. I think it's, at the end of the day, finding your passions, finding the things that you're good at and that's going to add value to somebody professionally, and then finding who it is that would hire you to do that and connecting with them in different ways. I think the one thing you don't want to do is to be pushy, though. I like people that are proactive in reaching out to me. And I've seen that in other cases, but I've also found that it can be obnoxious too. And I would say also be bold in an ask, just don't be pushy. The best education you can get is doing it. Offer to work for free for 3 months and get an education working for free to be a part of a team. If there's somebody that's doing something you want to do, ask if you can shadow them. So I think there's so many unique opportunities today. I love the day that we're living in. I think my kids, we're saving for college for them. I don't think they're going to go to college. I don't think it's going to be a thing. I mean, I think it will be a thing. I think you can do anything. I don't think a traditional job is going to be what it has been even in my lifetime. But yeah, who knows? But I think remote work, I think this quarantine time has expedited the growth of it. And I don't think the world is ever going to go back to the way it was. But I think even after that's only going to grow, because people are realizing you can use Zoom, you can use the cloud, you can use all of these things, and office space is expensive. It's also inefficient you typically have to travel. The average commute in the world is over 20 minutes. That's 40 minutes both ways. Well, if you could put that towards work, a lot of productivity gain. Yeah, I love remote work and the opportunities it gives.
And I share your joy in remote work. Like, even though I went back to corporate to just try that one specific job that I wanted to reach and realize, hey, I could do this remotely. We also have a question. She used to be part of my small church group. Her name's Ariane, and she's asking, what are the possible problems one might face in remote work today? And she would love to hear your perspective as a leader.
I think the challenges become personal relationships. I think that's an important part of everything we do in life. It's just being able to connect relationally with our colleagues, with the people that we're working with. I think a lot of the value we get from work is not as much what we do, but who we're doing it with. Ferina, I feel like you and I are good friends, but we've never met face to face. But we have met face to face because we use Zoom a lot, but we haven't met physically. And so some people, and that's where I hate the word virtual, because I think virtual gives this perception of it's not real. It's remote. I think it's using a lot of video conferencing, creates a good personal connection. It's a way to avoid that. But I think the biggest opportunity for it to fail is because there's less personal connection often made with remote work. It's easy for people to just act like remote workers are robots. It's all transactional of, can you do this for me? And then and then send it back, and just an email address that I send work to and get things done. But from my perspective, I think good remote work involves deep personal relationships that are just as critical in a physical workplace than they are in a remote workspace. So I think that's the biggest gap. I think the other side is competition. I think when you think about physical location of whether people that can hire are limited to a physical location, where now your competition for remote work is everyone all over the world. And so, if I'm looking for a graphic designer, there are probably 5 million graphic designers that I could hire, literally. And so that's a lot of competition in that space, could be relevant for the needs that we specifically have. So those are some of the unique challenges. I think it's what that also means is that anyone anywhere in the world can hire you. And so I think the opportunities are probably more significant than the challenges. But I think it's going to take some shifting, because I think to date, the way people have treated remote teams in remote work is very transactional. And I think effective remote work is going to prioritize relational connection.
And I think it's not practiced that often, right? I know in the team, we've been doing things that aren't really what's expected. And I'd love for you to share the journey of learning from, the transactional to a relational kind of remote team that everybody's looking forward to meetings, or they're not looking forward because they don't want to embarrass themselves in a fun way. So yes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you built the team in this kind of environment remotely.
Yeah, the first team member I hired overseas, from outside of the overseas being outside of the United States, in the Philippines, Carla, a girl named Carla that people don't know here, but she was young. She was like 19 or 20 years old, but she was so hardworking and she was so friendly. And I prioritized Skype was the video conferencing tool we used back then, doing a regular Skype call with her to make that connection. And then as we began to build the team, we shifted to Zoom and had group team meetings. And it was just, I would say it wasn't intentional on my part. It just happened. And I valued the personal relationships and really enjoyed learning culturally about the Philippines. And I think that we morphed, and part of learning about each other has been playing games and doing trivia and doing challenges and learning just each other's culture through activities. And I feel like, it's really challenging because I've really wanted to go to the Philippines. And so I would say the team is like family to me. And there are several team members that, like you, Ferina, that have been with the team for years, and there's deep personal relationship. I also am one of those people that desires to be physically connected and personally connected. While I feel like there is depth in that connection, I do feel like excited about being able to just be in the same room at some point and also making that connection. And I think that's a value that should cross over with remote work when possible, is being able to meet monthly or quarterly, and so even when I went remote with Community Bible Church, I would fly back to Texas to be in the room, to be in face-to-face meetings, just to keep that relational connection deep. So I think when you can incorporate face-to-face physical gatherings, that's great. It's just not necessary in the day-to-day.
Another question from Ariane. So she says she's been working in tech and remotely for around 4 years. She says in parentheses, I don't want to sound like a feminist, but how do you view women in tech today?
That's a great question, especially here in the States. And I don't know what it is necessarily globally, but I think it's something like 97% of those in the tech industry are male. And it's predominantly here in the United States, predominantly white men. And I think that that's both from a racial standpoint and a gender standpoint is a problem, because there's not anything about our DNA that makes white men better at tech, practically on our team. And I have found in the employees that I work best with, I have found women to be harder workers. I found women to be more creative. I found women to be more consistent. I don't know that we've ever had to fire a female. You know, we've had women that have got other jobs and done other things, but I fired 2 men from our team because they were incompetent. And so my experience from a work standpoint, and this is in the United States and outside of the United States, I did fire 1 woman here in the States. Yeah, I have found quite the opposite from a hiring standpoint. It is disappointing how that differentiation has happened in the world, and I think you see it in different cultures more significantly. It's going to change, and I think the leveling of education and I think some of that has to do with access to education historically, and I think that's what the internet is bringing to us, is new opportunity for education, and I think that's flattening the playing field. So I do think that will change in the near future. Because technology is allowing it to change, not because people are being intentional enough around it.
All right, a last few questions. From a hiring standpoint, you observe women are, and that there's not necessarily a lot of women in tech working, and you're growing 2 lovely daughters. How do you think the future will be like for them, seeing their family, you as a father, as a leader of your household, into technology, into courses, and we all know one of your daughters is starting a retreat for kids, which I have never heard of.
Yep.
Child CEO. How do you think it's going to be like for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I grew up in a house with a single mom and my sister. And so I've kind of been the lone guy, you know, and I'm in a house now with my wife and 2 daughters. And maybe that's just even God wired me, you know, to better relate and connect to girls and to women in that way. Because even with our team, like I feel a paternal nature in how I lead our team. But it's interesting just watching their wiring. You know, my oldest daughter she's a daddy's girl, and she has a lot of different interests. She finds interest just to spend time with me, of that she'll pretend like she likes baseball even though she doesn't like baseball. I think even some of the tech stuff, but we've been very intentional to feed her passions, and both of their passions. Where my youngest daughter, ballet and music and art is her thing, but she's really creative with ideas, and we sent her to an entrepreneurship camp. They built a lemonade stand, but it taught them of product development. Stage 1 was research the product. Stage 2 was product development. So they went and researched lemonade, then they developed their product, and then they did product research. So who's going to buy their product? And then they did product marketing, and they went and like made signs and things like that. And then they went and set up a stand. This was on Wall Street here in New York, and sold lemonade on Wall Street. And so I've been pushing, because I'm entrepreneurial, the opportunities that exist for them. Starting a business 20 years ago there was a lot of work involved, where today I think anybody can start a business in different ways. When I was a kid growing up, I sold baseball cards, and I sold candy out of my locker, and and so I was entrepreneurial, and I see that in my daughter. And so I'm trying not to push it too much and let it be her passion and following. But yeah, it was fun when she came to me and it will continue to be interesting to see how that develops for them. I get so excited about the world that they're moving into, and yeah, I'm going to keep feeding those passions. I think my youngest daughter, she could get into teaching dance online. Like there's so many unique things that can be done through technology and will continue to develop from an opportunity standpoint. Yeah, I get so excited about the future and what the world that my girls will get to live in. There's lots of terrible things about things that are developing in our world, but I think there's some exciting things too, and I get excited for them.
Likewise, I love seeing them on your stories and Katie's stories. And my last question is for you. What does the future look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I used to have long-term dreams and goals. And Ferina, you're familiar with my story took the biggest risk of my life about a year and a half ago, and I fell on my face, and it leaves scars when you take risks. And this is part of life. This is part of entrepreneurship. And so in some ways since that, I stopped making long-term plans, and I just started saying, these are the doors God has opened in front of me. I'm going to have a structure so that if things fall out that I'm not, scrambling, but I'm going to stop making long-term plans, and I'm going to start just taking advantage of what's in front of me with not pursuing anything that I wouldn't want to do long term, and being diversified a little bit from just a business standpoint. So the thing that I, though, Ferina, am most passionate about is online learning. And so Kajabi is the technology that I've gotten really into. I bought into it 5 years ago, but tinkered with it. I believe that because I do a lot of consulting, I trade time for money. And I feel like online learning allows me and to do that with anybody, anywhere, without getting on an airplane. So I spend a lot, I fly 100,000 miles a year for the last 4 years. And I'm in a place where coronavirus has forced me to be home. And I've realized I can actually do more from home and be with my family more. That's where I am most invested moving forward in online learning and developing online events. And so we launched online women's retreat, online fitness retreat. My daughter's launching online kids retreat. We're doing online marriage retreat. We've got a lot of exciting things that we're developing and helping other people with stuff. I think intellectual property is the most valuable thing that we have, but I think it's what we do with it is what defines the value. And so I think you've got to figure out, how do you package that? How do you deliver that? How do you get that to the right people in the right way so that they can gain value from that intellectual property, and that you can gain value from the development of that intellectual property. So I want to help people do that, and the things that I've learned along the way in my journey. But then I also want to help other people. Am also not making too long of plans. I am kind of seeing what doors God opens and which doors God closes, and trying to be smart along the way. I do love to, we do a lot of agency work. And one of the things that I have found and value is working with the right people. And so a lot of the work I do, and majority of the work I do, is with Dunham and Company. It's fun to help their work with Christian ministries, and to get to work with some of the best and largest and most impactful Christian ministries around the world. In partnership with them is a thrill. With Amplify Social Media, we are working with some incredible, pastors and ministries and small businesses. Mike Todd with Transformation Church has become one of my favorite people in the world. Donnie McClurkin at here in New York at Perfecting Faith Church. And so getting to really work with the churches, and just some really, we get to do some fun things, and then we'll see what doors God opens. But I would say it's partnerships and friendships with clients, and partnership and friendships with our colleagues. There's nothing transactional about what we're doing now. And I think that's an exciting place to be, so that we can just progress. And that was a door that we felt like God was closing and wanted us to close. So Ferina, I want to keep finding good partners to join our team, good partners that we can help, build out their intellectual property, good partners that we can help and support them around social media. So that's the reality of our world. It is a vague future, but I think it's an exciting future with limitless possibilities.
You certainly make it sound like the entrepreneurial journey is not a lonely road. Hearing you with all these partnerships and friendship, it's like you're building your own community, where I believe it's not about making millions, it's about touching millions.
I do want to be clear though on this. It's because it's a good point of that's my heart. And I think I sometimes can make entrepreneurship, and you can hear it on podcasts and things, of it's so beautiful. I also know that my decisions affect our clients, which are impacting millions of people, and they affect our team. The big risk I took was affecting millions of people in theory, because you think about the impact of our clients, but really it was affecting about 20, 25 people very significantly. And that's heavy. And I think as you get into business development, that was the most isolated I felt, because it was like, man, this is on me. I can ask for advice at the end of the day as the entrepreneur, whatever initiative you're taking, and like with your podcast and your coaching, and that affects your coaching clients. There's give and take. I've got a lot of clients that don't pay. And then I got the annoying part of having to do I bug them? Do I, know they're struggling? I want to help them anyway. I want to be clear that entrepreneurship is so incredible. And it's also so hard. And I hear a lot of, and even consulting, a lot of people would say, oh, I'm going to go start a business. I'm going to start a consulting business. And I'll ask, does anybody ask you? And I think for you, Ferina, you're starting a business right now in coaching. Well, the reality is people were coming to you asking for advice. And so it's natural to move into a business. And that's a good alert. It's a journey that has bumps along the way, but it's not for everyone. But it's fun. It can be so rewarding. And I think one of the things I'm always looking for is what's the win-win-win-win-win. And so how can the client win? How can the team win? Employees win? How can I, my family, win? And I think that's a win of how can I have great impact? How can I create jobs? How can I provide for my family. It's complicated at the end of the day, and I'm figuring it out every day, but I do have greater clarity of what I want to do. And I think the biggest clarity that I continue to gain, the advice I could give, is who you are is way more important than what you do, and who you do things with is way more important than what you're doing with them. And I think the more you can value relationships, everything is just, life is better with healthy relationships, way more than stuff you acquire and stuff you do.
That is so powerful. It's like you are an entrepreneur, so you can serve these people who God has placed in your life or your team or work. And I feel like this is a mentorship in its state. It's not even an interview anymore. It's like I just hid it in an interview form, but I'm here to pick your brain on your entrepreneurship journey and as a leader, hiring people.
Well, I appreciate it, Ferina. It's so good to know you, and I'm so grateful that God brought us together, and for your friendship, and it's just been fun to watch your journey and watch you grow and watch you try a number of different things too, and getting to know what you want to do, and getting to know your giftings and your passions. And remote work gives you so many opportunities, and it wasn't my intention. My intention was to do the American dream, is to buy a house and cars. And we were in the middle of that. And now we live in a small apartment, but we want to invest in our experiences together. And that's our value. That's what we value. You've got to figure out what you value and what you want to do and make it happen. And if it's your own company, doesn't mean you can't have a job and start your own company and do multiple things at the same time. I think I've got 5 jobs. And yeah. And Ferina, you've done that through the years too. Of this has been a journey. And I think you're getting greater and greater clarity every step of the way.
Wouldn't have been possible without you. So again, thank you. And I hope the weather doesn't...
Part of the experience, remote work.
I know this is a reality that I'm gonna face, and even with the technology, and I'm like, while I was thinking like, okay, I think I'm gonna invest in like a microphone that doesn't hear something, and like a headphone that's gonna cancel out everything else. So yeah, so Nils, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I don't know why I always feel like it's the first time I listen to you, and I even hear your podcast and your YouTube videos and hear you every week, but it's still different. It's amazing. It's always a pleasure, and I hope we get to do this another time when you're available.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
If you haven't known by now that Instagram is one of my favorite platforms to hang around with, and I want to hang around with you and invite you to join the journey on Instagram. My Instagram is @Ferina Santos, and guess what? I'm also on Spotify with brand new podcasts every week that talk about productivity, remote work, and how you can achieve career freedom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the journey on YouTube and on these other platforms as well.
Nils, it's raining like a storm here. I don't know if you can hear it.
Can hear it now.
Okay, thank God. Because I'm like, I'm gonna probably cut this out, but I was so worried. I'm praying like, please don't die internet, because it's been crazy. I've been telling you.
Yeah.
It helped us grow. Oh my gosh.
I did hear that.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out my other videos. Yes, gotta check them out. And let me know if you did so I can thank you personally and you can appear on my show. All right, I'll see you in the next episode.